The human population has been disconnecting from nature for the past couple centuries. Ever since we started developing the land and on this massive industrial scale and spending all of our time inside, we've kind of lost our connection with our original home. This new lifestyle that we have is much more comfortable, much more convenient. We don't have to worry about weather. We don't have to worry about starving. We have good medicine. There's a lot of really important advantages to this modern lifestyle. Life is much safer and much more comfortable than it used to be for our ancestors. But it didn't come for free. This safety and stability that we find in modern day life compared to ancient hunter-gatherer life, it has come at a cost, and I think we're only just beginning to realize what we traded. When we left nature, we left behind our connection to our home. We left behind our sense of purpose and our sense of belonging to this planet. We even left behind a spiritual realm that we don't really understand anymore. What I'm trying to find is a path forward that allows us to merge the old ways of living, being in touch with nature, with the new ways of living in a modern city. I think we can find a path forward that incorporates both those perspectives. Because some of the things that we lost when we left our original home in nature have not been replaced by society. And I think a lot of people are feeling a lot of anxiety because of that. My first stop on this trip is in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I'll be talking to Annie Nelson. I met Annie a couple years ago when she reached out to me to actually have me edit some of her hiking videos. She was attempting to hike half of the North Country Trail, starting at the halfway point of Michigan and working her way west all the way to North Dakota. But she made a whole series on YouTube about her hike, so you can follow that if you'd like to. But I found her to be a really thoughtful person, and we had many conversations while we were making the series about why she was out there, and she's out there for all the right reasons. So I'm really interested to get to meet up with her and talk about why she did that hike and what kind of lasting effects it has had in her life. The weather kind of took a turn for the worse, and it's been cloudy and foggy since last night. Now that I'm in Minnesota, the temperatures have dropped a little bit, and all of this fog in the air has turned into frost on the trees, and they look really cool. So I'm gonna get the drone out and film some of that. Got some time to kill before I meet up with Annie anyway. Here's a quick road trip tip. If you ever need to find some free Wi-Fi, you can always just park outside of a McDonald's. Usually it's strong enough that you can still pick it up inside your car. Especially now with COVID, a lot of places are closed inside, so this is an easy way to find some Wi-Fi without having to leave your car. I'm in Minnesota now, and the landscape has definitely changed. I've left behind the massive open flatlands of South Dakota and traded it for some more dynamic landscape. It's a little bit hillier here, and I'm in the northern forests now. This is more familiar to me. This is the type of landscape that I grew up in.
I think when I started out getting really into the outdoors, I had this expectation that I was going to be happy all the time, and I learned very quickly that that's not what happens. That's not what happens. But at the same time, you're like, what is happening is, even on days when I was struggling physically or mentally and kind of miserable, I was still like, I just felt totally different than how I feel at home, because I was using all of my skills. You know, you use your mind, your body, your smarts. You know, you like really have to be thinking out there in a way that you don't have to be thinking every day when you're just going to the grocery store, kind of judging, like, you know, is the situation survivable all the time? And that just kind of elevates it heightens your awareness and your presence in the current moment, and your awareness of your surroundings in this way that's intoxicating, like even when you're kind of struggling a little bit. So now I just think that, like, it's not that I haven't had like days in this pandemic when things have been hard, but I do feel like I have coped with it pretty well. And I feel like that's what the outdoor has gifted me, is kind of this toughness. Yeah. I stopped living with the delusion that suffering isn't a part of life, a natural part of life, right? And it's not that I want to suffer, and I'm not gonna lie, I actively do everything I can to avoid suffering still. But when I can't avoid it, and it's just happening, I feel like there's just a part of me that's a little bit better prepared for that now. Yeah.
And the first interview went super well. I knew it would go well. Annie is one of the people that I know the most out of anybody that I'm interviewing for this trip. I basically got to understand how her mind works by editing all of her footage for about 6 months. During these dialogues, when we're talking to the camera, it's basically just a stream of consciousness, and we just say whatever comes to mind. And there's a lot of stuff that gets cut. But when you edit somebody's footage like this, you really understand how they work. And I knew that from editing her footage that she's a really genuine person, and she has a really deep connection to nature. So she just left, and I'm staying out here for the night. This is going to be my first official campground of the trip, and maybe my only official campground of this trip. And it's pretty nice to have a real fire ring with a picnic table. I can set up my tent here. I don't have to worry about being bothered by anybody. I have the whole place to myself tonight. So this is some nice camping. It's about 19 degrees, but I'm dressed for it, and I'm nice and cozy. Got my chili here, and it's going to be a good night. Got to sleep in nice and late today. Woke up to a really beautiful morning. Even though it's cloudy, all this hoarfrost on the trees is just really pretty. This is all the gear that I have to use to film an interview out here. So I've got my main backpack with all my camping gear in it, and then I have my camera backpack. That's just camera gear, and big tripod too. So it's only about 3/4 of a mile to the parking lot, but I'll be front packing the camera backpack. Then I have about a 5.5 hour drive today to get to my parents' house in Delafield, Wisconsin. Probably soak in the hot tub, and then I'll be heading down to Chicago. I'm in Huntley, Illinois this morning. I just left my parents' house after staying there for a couple days. It was kind of nice to take a break and actually sleep in a real bed for a couple nights. But then this morning I headed down to Illinois, just outside of Chicago, to interview Tony Pompa, who's the owner of True North Expeditions. It's a guided backpacking company, but they also incorporate things like yoga and paddling and all kinds of other adventures too. I've been working with him and his company for about a year now, but that's all been virtually. I haven't actually met him yet, so it was nice to actually meet him in person. He's got good intentions with his company, and his goal is to just introduce people to the wilderness and kind of help them get over the barrier of a lot of the things that can make it difficult to get into backpacking and hiking. For people like us who have been doing it for a long time, it might not seem like a big deal, but for people who have never done it before, it can be kind of overwhelming. So the goal with that company is to help people through that process and introduce them to all of the benefits that we find out here in nature.
The benefits of spending time out in nature, I think the biggest thing is, I think humans in general don't take enough time for themselves. I mean, you know, we have careers, we have kids, we have people relying on us for certain things. We have, you know, calendars that are full of different events and things like that. And I think with, especially with COVID happening really in 2020, I think a lot of people had the chance to look back and when they weren't able to do all those things, I wonder if, you know, to me, it almost seems like a lot of people would say, you know, we're not taking time as individuals or as families to do stuff as a unit. It's, you know, we got to get the kids here, or I got to be there, or I got this meeting to go to. And so I think that people spending time outdoors just lets you get away from all that, really, and just taking that time to unwind and not live on the schedule. When you're on the trail, we live by the sun, right? We wake up with the sun, we go to sleep with the sun when the sun goes down. And that's not normal for us. And it takes people a lot of time, I think, especially if you're new to being outdoors. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that. I think people just need to take that time to not live by their phone or a certain schedule and just decompress and get away from that.
So right now I'm just importing all that footage. Got a little bit of time to kill, and then I'll be heading to my next interview for the day, which is in Sandwich, Illinois. And I'll be talking to another guided backpacking company. This guy's name is Paul Classon, and he owns a company called Redline. I've been working with him even longer, and I've actually met up with him a few times. He comes out west quite often. It was about 2 summers ago that Paul reached out to me after seeing some of my movies, because he wanted to work together and have some videos made for his company. And we met each other out in Glacier National Park. And right away we kicked it off and had a really good conversation about the benefits of spending time in nature.
There she is. Look at her. Paul Classen, Troop 45. Can barely make her out. Early 90s probably. I did Philmont in 92 and 94 with it. And it was my Boy Scout pack throughout. So every Isle Royal probably in 93. It's a whole new different feel. I mean, it's a step ladder on your back.
Do you feel like you could carry 100 pounds?
Yeah. Well, with this hip belt, man, I mean, that's as cushy as it gets there. This is a personal story of profound truth. I mean, I've went through sitting on a rock on the side of Cloud Peak, just sobbing uncontrollably for hours. I questioning every part of myself and life. And I should just go back to my car. I never should have did this trip, right? I never should have did this trip. And then I just want to drive back to the nearest town I can and go find a bar stool and sit on it and drink beer. And just to be social again, but just to go back to an old comfort. Because I'm not being out here with the demon was kicking my ass all over the place. I did that. That first solo trip I did to Cloud Peak, that's exactly what happened. I mean, I started off and then by the end of the trip, the middle of the trip, out there, just can't even keep your emotions in check out there. It was a huge purr. It was exactly as cathartic as it needed to be, and it did everything it needed to do, because that's why I'm here right now, an empowered version of that demon sitting here. And now, like when that demon comes knocking, he sits next to me and we have coffee and we talk, and he doesn't control me anymore. And that demon could be, probably what it is for a lot of people, I mean, maybe not a great upbringing, or maybe not a great relationship with your parents, or maybe a breakup here, there, a divorce, or self-worth issues, or any of the pretty common, and the common's not even the right word. Everybody has to deal with that. That's not, every human being has had to confront their own self-worth at some point. Really knowing yourself well enough to know all of those things is an amazing gift, because you get to the point where you're so grateful that you can't even believe that you are you. You know what I mean? I cannot believe that this is me, and this is my life, and this is my existence. Like, that's how grateful I am now at this point, really.
I just left Paul's house, and now I'm on my way to Michigan. Paul was nice enough to give me a place to stay for the night, so I didn't have to find a place to camp. We had a really good conversation in his garage, also doubling as the Red Line training headquarters. He's a pretty deep thinker, and it's pretty clear that he has been through a lot in his life, and nature has always been his place to kind of find solace and to just get his mind in order. And it's definitely been the same way for me. Anytime that I have problems in my life or important things to think about, nature is always a place that I retreat to. And I usually go out there alone. It allows me to just be alone with my thoughts, remove myself from any distractions, and really face whatever problems I'm having. There's no avoiding those things out there. And even though it might be uncomfortable in the moment, it's the best way to understand what's really going on and to start to address it. So for both of us, nature has been really beneficial in that way.